You know what the problem is with most species in this galaxy? They judge based on appearance. And let me tell you something. After 30 years of training soldiers across 12 different systems, I thought I had seen everything. I thought I knew better. I was wrong. My name is Tharix, and I teach advanced combat theory at the Galactic Federation Academy on Varaxis Prime. Before you ask, yes, I have killed more beings than you have probably met in your entire life. 4 wars, 16 campaigns, and countless skirmishes have given me a perspective that most instructors simply do not possess. I do not teach theory from books. I teach reality from experience. That particular morning started like any other. 73 students filed into my classroom, representing 42 different species from across the Federation. Brutarians, with their massive frames and thick hides. Fraken, like myself, lean and deadly. Quilvorans with their 6 arms. Heptoids with their crystalline exoskeletons. And humans. Ah yes, humans. The newest members of the Galactic Federation, and quite possibly the most underestimated species I have ever encountered. They look so fragile, you understand? Soft skin, no natural armor, no claws, no venom sacs, no size advantage. When they first joined the Federation 20 years ago, everyone assumed they would need constant protection, guard duty, babysitting essentially. Kira sat in the back row, as she had for the past 16 weeks. Small even by human standards, maybe 1.6 meters tall, slim build, with dark hair pulled back in a practical tail. She never spoke unless spoken to, never volunteered answers, never drew attention to herself. The perfect invisible student, which made her the perfect target for idiots like Draxon. Draxon was a Brutarian, and if you have never met one, consider yourself fortunate. They stand nearly 3 meters tall, weigh approximately 400 kilograms, and possess strength that can bend steel bars. Their homeworld has gravity twice that of standard Federation norm. They are natural warriors, proud of their combat heritage, and often, well, let us just say they are not known for their humility or intelligence. For weeks, Draxon had been making Kira's life difficult, knocking her materials off her desk as he passed, making loud comments about human weakness, suggesting she should quit the academy and go back to whatever soft world she came from. I had warned him twice, given him demerits, threatened expulsion. He did not listen. That morning, I was demonstrating proper defensive responses to surprise attacks. I needed 2 volunteers for the practical portion. Before I could select anyone, Draxon's hand shot up. I volunteer, instructor, and I recommend the human as my partner. She needs the practice. The classroom went quiet. Several students shifted uncomfortably. Everyone knew what was happening. Everyone knew Draxon was looking for an excuse to hurt her. Kira stood up slowly, her face completely blank. No fear, no anger, nothing. Just calm acceptance. Kira, you do not have to, I began. It is fine, Instructor Tharix, she said quietly. I accept. They moved to the center of the training floor. Draxon grinned, showing all his teeth. It was not a pleasant expression. I explained the exercise. Draxon would attempt a surprise grab. Kira would demonstrate proper escape techniques. No strikes to vital areas. Controlled force only. Standard training protocol. Begin when ready, I announced. Draxon did not wait even half a second. He lunged forward with speed that was honestly impressive for his size, both massive hands reaching for Kira's shoulders. This was not a training grab. This was an attack meant to crush bones. What happened next took approximately 4 seconds, but I have replayed it in my mind thousands of times since. Kira moved, not away, toward him. She slipped inside his reach before his hands could close, driving her elbow upward into the soft tissue under his jaw with a crack that echoed through the room. Draxon's head snapped back. She pivoted, using his forward momentum against him, and swept his leg. All 400 kilograms of Brutarian muscle crashed to the floor. The impact shook the room. But she was not done. Oh no, not even close. Before Draxon could recover, Kira dropped onto his chest, one knee pinning his primary arm, her hand finding a pressure point on his neck that made him gasp in pain. "Do you yield?" she asked. Her voice was still quiet, still polite, still absolutely calm. Draxon roared and bucked, trying to throw her off. She rode the movement, adjusted her position, and applied more pressure. His face turned an alarming shade of purple. I said, "Do you yield?" That is when Draxon's 3 friends made the stupidest decision of their lives. Vexer, Grell, and Huntok rushed forward to help their companion. Kira saw them coming. Her head turned, those human eyes scanning, calculating, and I swear I saw something shift in her expression. Something cold, something predatory. She released Draxon and stood in one fluid motion. Vexor reached her first, throwing a punch that should have taken her head off. She ducked under it, drove her fist into his kidney, and as he folded, brought her knee up into his face. Blood sprayed. He went down. Grell came from her left, Huntok from her right. Classic pincer attack, taught in basic combat training, except Kira did not retreat. She charged directly at Grell, the smaller of the two. He was not expecting that. Nobody expects the tiny human to attack the larger opponent. She leaped, wrapped her legs around his neck, and twisted. The momentum sent both of them spinning. Grell hit the floor face first with Kira on top of him, already moving toward Huntok. Huntok had 3 seconds to react. He chose poorly. He tried to grab her. She let him catch her arm, then used it as a fulcrum to swing her entire body around, both feet slamming into his throat. He staggered back, choking, and she followed. A strike to the solar plexus, another to the temple, a sweep that took out both his legs. He fell like a demolished building. Draxon had recovered enough to stand. He charged at Kira's back with a roar of pure rage. She heard him coming. Of course she did. She spun, dropped low, and drove her shoulder into his knee at an angle that knees are definitely not supposed to bend. The snap was audible throughout the entire classroom. Draxon screamed and collapsed. Again. Silence filled the training hall. Absolute, total silence. 4 of the Academy's largest students lay on the floor in various states of consciousness. Kira stood in the center, breathing slightly harder than normal, but otherwise appearing completely unaffected. There was blood on her uniform, but none of it was hers. She looked at me, and I saw something in her eyes that made my combat-hardened instincts scream warnings. This was not a student. This was a soldier, a real one. "Instructor Therix, I apologize for the disruption to your class," she said formally. "I am ready to accept whatever disciplinary actions you deem appropriate. However, for the record, I would like to state that Draxon attacked me with lethal intent, and his companions joined the assault. I defended myself using reasonable force. All 4 are alive and will recover." Reasonable force. She called that reasonable force. I looked at the carnage, looked at her, looked at my other students, who were staring with expressions ranging from shock to outright terror. "Class dismissed," I said quietly. "Everyone except Kira, report to your next scheduled activity. Medical teams to the training floor immediately. Kira, you will remain here." The students fled. literally fled. I had never seen a classroom empty so quickly. Kira stood at attention, hands clasped behind her back, waiting. The medical teams arrived and began treating the 4 attackers. Draxon was still whimpering about his knee. Vexer had a broken nose and possibly a ruptured kidney. Grell had a concussion. Huntok could barely breathe. Academy security arrived next, led by Borvak, a grizzled veteran who had seen his share of cadet fights. He took one look at the scene and let out a low whistle. "What in the name of the 17 hells happened here, Therix?" I gestured to Kira, who still stood perfectly still, perfectly calm, like a statue of patient obedience. That human happened. Borvak's eyes widened. He looked at Kira, then at the 4 massive students being loaded onto medical stretchers, then back at Kira. That little thing did all this? That little thing just taught me that I know absolutely nothing about humans, I said quietly. And I suspect we are all about to learn a very painful lesson. Kira said nothing. She simply waited, those cold, calculating eyes watching everything, missing nothing. And I realized with absolute certainty that she had been holding back, that what we had just witnessed was restraint, not full capability. The Academy was about to discover what happens when you corner a human. And I had the distinct feeling that before this was over, nobody was going to survive the lesson unchanged. The security footage did not lie, but watching it still made my scales itch with discomfort. Administrator Yaleth replayed the incident for the 7th time, her 4 eyes blinking in different sequences as she processed what she was seeing. Borvak stood beside me, arms crossed, his usual gruff demeanor replaced by something approaching respect, or possibly fear. With him, those 2 emotions often looked identical. "Pause it there," Yeleth said, freezing the image at the moment Kira's elbow connected with Draxon's jaw. "Look at the angle. Look at the precision. That is not self-defense training. That is military conditioning." "The human said she grew up on a colony world," Borvak offered. "Maybe they train differently?" I laughed. Actually laughed. Both of them turned to stare at me. "You think colony worlds teach their children to dismantle 4 trained fighters in under 10 seconds? No. This is something else entirely." Yeleth tapped her datapad, pulling up Kira's file. Standard Academy records. Birth date, colony of origin listed as terminus, basic education certificates, entrance exam scores that were good but not exceptional. Everything looked completely normal, except for one detail. "Her file has a Federation military seal on it," I said, pointing to the small icon in the corner. "Level 7 classification. We cannot access her full background without proper authorization." "Well then, let us get that authorization," Yeleth said firmly. "I want to know exactly who we have in our academy." While she went to file the official request, I decided to talk to Kira directly. She sat in the waiting area outside the medical bay, still wearing her blood-stained uniform, looking completely unbothered by the entire situation. 2 other students, Torin and Prila, sat far on the opposite side of the room, casting nervous glances in her direction. I sat down beside her. She straightened slightly, but did not look at me. "How are you feeling?" I asked. "Fine, instructor. A few bruises. Nothing serious." "That is not what I meant." She finally turned to face me, and those eyes held an exhaustion that had nothing to do with physical tiredness. "Instructor Therix, I warned him. Multiple times. I filed 3 formal complaints. I told him explicitly that if he attacked me with lethal force, I would respond appropriately. He chose not to listen. Where did you learn to fight like that?" A ghost of a smile crossed her face. Terminus is not like other colony worlds, instructor. It is a death world. Gravity is 1.4 standard. The local predators include things that would give your nightmares. Children learn to fight before they learn to read, because if you cannot defend yourself, you do not survive to adulthood. That explains some of it. Not all of it. She was quiet for a long moment. I served in the Terran Defense Forces for 6 years before coming here. Special operations. When I mustered out, they sealed my records because some missions remain classified. I came to the academy because I wanted a different life, a quieter life. I wanted to teach, not fight. Yet you fight remarkably well for someone seeking peace. You can take the soldier out of the war, instructor, but the training never leaves. When Draxon attacked, my body responded the way it was conditioned to respond. Efficiently, completely, with overwhelming force to ensure the threat could not continue. The medical bay doors opened. Lexon, the head medical officer, emerged looking tired. The 4 attackers will recover. Draxon needs surgery on his knee. Vexor has internal bleeding, but we stabilized him. The other 2 have concussions and various fractures. They are extraordinarily lucky that the human held back. Held back? Borvak appeared behind Lexon, his expression incredulous. You call that holding back? Lexon's expression was grim. Chief Borvak, I have been a combat medic for 20 years. I know the difference between someone trying to kill and someone trying to neutralize. Every strike that human delivered was precise, measured, and calculated to disable without causing permanent damage. If she had wanted them dead, they would be dead. She gave them exactly enough damage to stop the threat and no more. The implications of that statement settled over us like a cold blanket. Yelith returned, her face pale despite her natural blue coloration. She held her datapad with shaking hands. I got the authorization. I accessed her full file. She looked at Kira with something approaching awe. You were part of Operation Nightfall. You survived the Kelvor campaign. You have 17 confirmed kills in close quarters combat and commanded a strike team that... That information is still classified, Administrator. Kira interrupted gently. And not relevant to this situation. Not relevant? You are a decorated war hero sitting in my academy pretending to be a regular student. I am a regular student. My past does not define my present. I came here to learn, to grow, to move beyond what I was. But I will not allow myself to be killed or seriously injured because someone decided I look like an easy target. Borvak's communicator chirped. He answered it, listened, and his face darkened. We have a problem. Draxon's clan just arrived on campus. 12 of them. They are demanding to see Kira. They are talking about family honor and retribution. Kira stood slowly, that cold expression returning to her face. Then I suppose we are not done yet. They came for her at midnight. I was in my quarters reviewing training protocols when the emergency alert sounded. Security breach near the student dormitories, multiple hostiles. I grabbed my weapon and ran. By the time I arrived, it was already over. Well, the ambush part anyway. 12 Brutarians, all wearing clan colors, had surrounded Kira outside her building. Borvak's security team was still 3 minutes out. The attackers had timed it perfectly, or so they thought. You dishonored our brother, the largest one, Carvon, announced. You broke his knee, made him look weak. For this, you will pay. Kira stood perfectly still, assessing the situation. 12 opponents, each outweighing her by 200 kilograms minimum. Any reasonable person would surrender, call for help, try to negotiate. Kira was not reasonable. Last chance, she said quietly. Walk away. Tell your brother he started this. Tell him he lost fairly. Walk away and this ends here. Carvon laughed, a deep, rumbling sound that his companions echoed. You think you can fight all of us, little human? You got lucky with Draxon. That luck ends tonight. I never rely on luck. Then she ran, not away from them, toward the training complex 50 meters distant. The Brutarians roared and gave chase, exactly as she wanted them to do. I followed at a distance, keeping to the shadows. I should have stopped this. Called for backup. Done something official and proper. But something told me this needed to happen, that the galaxy needed to see what humans truly were when you backed them into a corner. Kira reached the training complex and slapped the door panel. The facility recognized her student credentials and opened. She disappeared inside. The 12 Brutarians crashed through seconds later. I accessed the external override and activated the building's internal monitoring system. Every screen in my vision lit up with different camera angles. The training complex was dark except for emergency lighting. Kira moved through it like a ghost, heading for the environmental controls. The Brutarians spread out, searching, calling insults and threats into the darkness. She hit the gravity controls first. The training rooms had variable gravity for different species. She cranked it to 2.1 standard, Brutarian normal. But she had grown up in 1.4 gravity. This gave her an advantage. Drexus found her first, or thought he did. She let him see her, led him into the hand-to-hand combat room, then used the padded walls and obstacles against him. He swung wildly. She ducked, weaved, struck pressure points with surgical precision. He went down in 40 seconds. 1 down, 11 to go. Hulvax and Gorvan came together, learning from their companion's mistake. She did not fight them directly. Instead, she activated the combat drones, usually used for defense training. Set them to stun mode. Let them harass the Brutarians, while she picked them off one by one. Gorvan took a drone strike to the back of the head. Kira swept his legs while he was distracted. His skull met the floor with a satisfying crack. Hulvax tried to grab her. She let him, then used a joint lock that bent his arm in a direction arms should never bend. He screamed and released her. A strike to the temple. He collapsed. The remaining 9 regrouped, finally showing some tactical thinking. They moved as a unit, checking corners, covering each other. Professional behavior. But Kira had trained with the best special operations teams humanity had produced. She knew every trick, every formation, every weakness. She led them to the zero-gravity chamber, hit the controls. Suddenly, 9 Brutarians were floating helplessly, completely out of their element. She used the handholds built into the walls, moving 3-dimensionally while they flailed. Picked them off, one by one. Pressure points, strikes to disable. Each Brutarian neutralized before the others could react. By the time Borvak and his team arrived, all 12 attackers were unconscious or groaning in pain. Kira stood in the center of the main training floor, breathing hard but standing tall. Her uniform was torn. Blood dripped from a cut above her eye, but she was standing. "Anyone else?" she called out to the empty room. Her voice echoed off the walls. "Anyone else want to test the weak little human?" Silence answered her. I stepped out of the shadows, my weapon lowered. Our eyes met across the room. "I warned them," she said simply. "I warned all of them." "I know. They did not listen. They never do." She looked at the fallen Brutarians, then back at me. "Humans have a saying, Instructor. We did not start the fire. but we will burn everything to ash before we let it consume us. Borvak's team moved in to secure the attackers. Medical teams were already on their way. Again. Then I realized the entire galaxy had been making a terrible mistake about humans. We thought they were weak because they looked fragile. We were wrong. They were not weak. They were mercy personified. And when you force mercy to become violence, nothing survives. The tribunal chamber was packed. Word had spread throughout the academy, throughout the entire station, about the human who had single-handedly defeated 16 opponents across 2 separate incidents. Students lined the walls. Instructors filled the gallery. Even off-duty personnel had found reasons to attend. Administrator Yaleth presided over the proceedings, flanked by 2 Federation adjudicators who had arrived specifically for this case. Draxon sat in the defendant section, his leg in a medical brace, surrounded by his clan members. All of them looked significantly worse for wear. Broken bones, concussions, bruised pride. Kira sat alone on the opposite side, still wearing her academy uniform, looking small and almost fragile under the harsh lighting. The evidence was overwhelming. Security footage from both incidents played on the main screen. Every angle, every strike, every moment of brutality captured in perfect clarity. But also captured were Draxon's initial attacks, the threats, the harassment, Kira's repeated warnings, her formal complaints that had been filed and largely ignored by lower-level administrators who assumed a human could not possibly be in real danger from academy students. The first adjudicator, a Quilvoran named Hexara, reviewed her datapad with all 6 hands. Let me ensure I understand the facts correctly. Draxon initiated hostile contact with lethal intent during a training exercise. When the defendant responded with appropriate defensive force, 3 of his companions joined the assault. Is this accurate? That is correct, adjudicator, Borvak confirmed from his position as chief witness. And the second incident? The one involving 12 assailants? Premeditated ambush on academy grounds with clear intent to cause serious bodily harm or death in retaliation for the first incident. Also correct? Hexara turned her multiple eyes toward Draxon. Did the defendant ever threaten you unprovoked? Draxon remained silent. Answer the question, Yaleth ordered. No, he finally muttered. But she humiliated me in front of everyone. She broke my knee. That demands nothing. The second adjudicator interrupted. He was an elderly heptoid named Qualvex, whose crystalline body had seen centuries of service. You attacked first. You suffered the consequences. Your clan then compounded the offense by attempting murder. The only question before this tribunal is what punishment fits these crimes. The deliberation took less than 10 minutes. When the adjudicators returned, their verdict was swift and absolute. Draxon expelled. Criminal charges filed, his clan members expelled. Criminal charges filed. Combined fines totaling 300,000 credits. Banned from Federation facilities for 15 years. Kira? Cleared of all charges. Self-defense confirmed. Commended for restraint given her capabilities. As the chamber emptied, I watched the other students' reactions. Fear, yes, but also respect, understanding. The human had tried peace first, had filed complaints, had given warnings, had done everything the proper way. Violence had been the last resort, not the first choice. That afternoon, I stood before my advanced combat theory class. 73 students, but the energy was completely different now. They sat straighter, paid closer attention, and when Kira entered and took her usual seat in the back, every eye followed her with newfound awareness. Today's lesson is about strategic assessment and threat evaluation, I began. For weeks, many of you watched Draxon harass Kira. How many of you assumed she was helpless, that she needed protection, that she was weak? Nearly every hand rose, slowly, reluctantly. Exactly. You judged based on appearance, on size, on your preconceptions about what makes someone dangerous. This is how soldiers die in actual combat. This is how entire military campaigns fail. I gestured to Kira. Come up here, please. She walked to the front, that same quiet composure she always carried. Kira has agreed to share some insights about human combat philosophy. Pay attention. Your lives may depend on it someday. She turned to face the class, and when she spoke, her voice carried an authority that made everyone lean forward. Humans do not want to fight. Violence is exhausting. It is messy. It causes trauma that lasts years. We avoid it whenever possible. We warn. We negotiate. We retreat. We do everything we can to find peaceful solutions. She paused, letting that sink in. But if you force us to fight, if you ignore every warning and push us into a corner, we will not fight to win. We will fight to ensure you never threaten us again. We will fight with everything we have, holding nothing back, because we know that mercy during combat only prolongs the suffering. A student near the front, Torin, raised his hand hesitantly. Why did you hold back then? The medical officer said you could have killed them all easily. Kira's expression softened slightly. Because killing is permanent. Those students made terrible choices, but they did not deserve to die for stupidity and arrogance. They deserved to learn, to grow, to become better. Death teaches nothing. But you could have, Torin pressed, if you wanted to. Yes, I could have. Any human with proper training could have. We are persistence predators from a death world. Our bodies are built for endurance. Our minds are wired for pattern recognition and tactical adaptation. We heal fast. We endure pain. We never stop. She looked around the room, making eye contact with as many students as possible. Here is what you need to understand about humans. We are not the strongest species, not the fastest, not the most naturally armed. But we are the most stubborn. We are the ones who look at impossible odds and ask how, not if. We are the ones who will chase prey for days until it collapses from exhaustion. We are the ones who turned every predator on our world into either livestock or companions. So when you meet a human, remember this. We prefer friends over enemies. We would rather build than destroy. We choose peace whenever possible. But if you absolutely insist on violence, if you ignore every warning and opportunity to walk away, then understand that we will end the threat completely and permanently. Not because we enjoy it, but because it is necessary. The classroom was silent, absolutely silent. I stepped forward. This is the lesson, students. Real warriors avoid unnecessary conflict. Real strength is knowing when not to use your full capabilities. Real victory is winning without fighting. But when combat becomes unavoidable, you commit completely or you do not survive. Kira returned to her seat. The class continued, but something fundamental had shifted. The other students no longer saw a small, weak human. They saw a soldier who had chosen mercy over violence 16 separate times and had been forced to demonstrate why that mercy should never be mistaken for weakness. Later, after class ended, I found Kira gathering her materials. You could have any position you wanted, I said. Command track, Special Operations Liaison, Advanced Tactics Instructor. Why stay as a regular student? She smiled, a genuine smile that reached her eyes. Because I already know how to fight, Instructor Tharix. I came here to learn how to build peace. That is a much harder skill to master. I watched her leave, and I understood something profound. Humans were not dangerous because they could fight. They were dangerous because they understood the cost of fighting and chose peace anyway. That made them the most terrifying species in the galaxy. Because when something that powerful chooses restraint, you should be very, very careful not to make them change their mind. The lesson was over. The galaxy had learned, and every species with sense would remember what happens when you attack a human first.